I read your 8 tips, like the general, we can go through them, but like they make a lot of sense. You know, the sleep, make sure it's regular, make sure it's regimented, lower the temperature to 68 degrees. I got that. Like, that's a good one. Walk, eat whole foods, only stuff your great grandmother would eat. I love all that. But like, what is there something special in the formula that takes you from on the CPAP machine and all these drugs to like Dana White? I feel like I'm in my 20s.
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what's on that. So, I mean, we need to start with the basics, right? I mean, we know this from Blue Zone studies. We know this from the big data that if you don't master your sleep, if you don't eat a whole food diet, which is a diet absent of processed food, and if you don't make exercise non-negotiable, basically nothing else matters. We can't really sleep our way around a poor diet, and we can't exercise our way around not sleeping. And again, we know this from big data, from Blue Zone studies. There's no continuity between diets. Now, meaning, if you look at the areas of the world where people are living the longest, healthiest, happiest lives, it's not because of the carnivore diet or the keto diet or paleo or pescatarian or vegan or vegetarian. It's because they are eating no processed food. And all of us can do that. All of us can switch to a whole food diet. The other non-negotiable is bringing your attention to your sleep. You know, a few years ago, I actually decided that I would schedule all of my meetings and travel around sleep and exercise. And I can't tell you what a demonstrative change in my life that made. So that's one of the things that I incorporate into clients of mine into their schedule. I really try to fix their sleep. And then finally, making mobility non-negotiable. We know that sitting is the new smoking. I mean, sedentary lifestyle is the leading cause of all-cause mortality. And this is entirely fixable. And so if you were to draw your attention to 3 things, I would say whole food diet, master your sleep, and make mobility non-negotiable. And a lot of people don't focus on those 3 things, and then they want the magic pill. Is it NAD IVs? Is it nicotinamide riboside? Is it ashwagandha, St. John's wort, CoQ10? Is it any of these magic supplements? And it's not. It's those 3 basics. And then after that, I truly believe that if you really want to embark on a sincere health journey, you need to supplement for deficiency, not the sake of supplementing. The worst thing you can do is get on Google and start Googling around about what is a good supplement. And this is where most people get lost, because you can make an argument for just about anything. So the question is, what does your body need? And we believe this in plant physiology. So if you were to take a leaf, let's say, that was rotting in a palm tree, and you called a true arborist, like a true botanist, out to look at that leaf, they wouldn't even touch the leaf. They would core test the soil. And they would say, you know what, Megyn, there's no nitrogen in this soil. And they would add nitrogen to the soil and the leaf would heal. Well, human beings are no different. When you deprive the human body of certain raw materials, and by raw materials, I'm talking about vitamins, minerals, amino acids, basic nutrients, you get the expression of disease. There's so many of your listeners right now that go to bed tired, but as their environment quiets, their mind wakes up. And they start to ruminate. So they lay there in bed and their mind awake, but their body tired, and they ruminate on things for minutes or hours, and it robs them of deep sleep. And this is very easy to fix. The same thing with, nagging issues like attention deficit disorders, which is not really an attention deficit at all. It's an attention overload disorder. It's too many windows opening in our mind at the same time. And most of us think that we need to fix this by adding amphetamines to our system to race the central nervous system to match the pace of the mind, things like Vyvanse, Ritalin, Adderall. But the truth is, we can supplement to quiet the mind. There are gut issues. The vast majority of my clients would have gut issues, diarrhea, constipation, irritability, cramping, bloating, and they couldn't relate it to what they had last eaten because they overlooked the pace of the gut. They look at food allergies and food sensitivities, but they don't know that certain nutrient deficiencies, so for example, a deficiency in something called methylfolate, which is very easy to get over the counter, it's a really inexpensive supplement, can fix gut motility issues, and they can restore the pace of their gut to normal. So now they don't eat the same thing on Monday and they're fine, and they eat the exact same thing on Wednesday and then end up blowing up like a tick. And so very often what happens in the human body is we deprive it of certain raw materials. Vitamin D3 is probably the most clinically deficient nutrient in the vast majority of human beings. And if you look at what happens when you just deprive the body of vitamin D3, cholecalciferol, the only vitamin, by the way, that human beings can make on our own, you don't need to eat, You don't need to supplement. You don't need to drink. All you need to do is expose your skin to sunlight. Your body will make it with the cholesterol in your bloodstream. This nutrient is so important for human function that when it's deficient, we get the expression of disease. If you look at the data on COVID, for example, the second leading cause of morbidity in COVID was a clinical deficiency in vitamin D3, not immunosuppressants, not obesity, not type 2 diabetes. It was a clinical deficiency in vitamin D3. And so very often what I'll do is I'll have clients of mine once in their lifetime do a test called a genetic methylation test. What this test does, it's a cheek swab. You swab your cheek, send it into a lab, and what this test will tell you is what nutrients, what raw material can your body convert into the usable form, and what can it not? And you supplement for that deficiency. If you want to see magic really happen in human beings, you give their body the raw material it needs to do its job. That's the simple truth.
Now, where can you get one of these tests? Only from Gary Brecka?
No,
or do you
there
get it
are
online?
lots of places that
who
do.
Will analyze it for you?
Yeah, there are lots of places that do genetic methylation tests. I mean, I have a genetic methylation test, but I'm not here to sell my test. You want to get a genetic methylation test. The reason why I say methylation is because if you get a full genome sequence, you're going to get paralysis of analysis. You're going to see that you have olive skin and green eyes and detached earlobes, and you can see the distance on your index fingers, and none of that matters, not in terms of what you supplement with. But genes of methylation are genes that take raw materials and convert them into the usable form. So for example, we pull crude oil out of the ground, but you can't put crude oil into your gas tank. And the reason why you can't is because the car doesn't understand that fuel source. But if you take crude oil and you refine it into gasoline, now the car can run. Well, human beings are no different. We take vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proteins, carbohydrates, nutrients of all kind. We put them into the body, and then the body converts these into the form it can use. If you can't make this conversion, you have a deficiency. And it is this deficiency that leads to the expression of these diseases. You know, the human genome is specifically designed to not pass on disease. But if you went to your doctor and you had high blood pressure and they did all kinds of cardiac exams, they did an EKG and an EEG and a dye contrast study and a cardiac catheterization and heart sounds and lung sounds, and they couldn't find anything wrong with your heart. The next thing they'll do is they'll look at your family history and they'll say, oh my gosh, Megyn, your mom's brother and your dad's brother both had high blood pressure. You have familial hypertension or genetically inherited hypertension. And you go, oh, I guess I just lost the genetic lottery. So now I need to make, medication for the rest of my life. And that's patently false. There aren't genes for a lot of these conditions. So they're not passed on the genome. They run in families, but they are not genetic. What we pass from generation to generation very often is not disease. We pass the inability for the body to refine a raw material, which causes a deficiency, which leads to that disease. So very specifically in Dana White's case, he had an impaired ability, had a gene mutation called MTHFR. I won't tell you what the nickname is for that gene.
Right. Got it.
It stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, just so you know. Not what it looks like. But this gene mutation, 46% of the population has it. So 46% of your listeners have it right now. And what this gene mutation does is it impairs the ability for the body, or blocks the ability for the body to convert folic acid into the form the body can use, called folinic acid or methylfolate. And that doesn't sound like a big deal until you realize that folic acid is the most prevalent nutrient in the human diet. We spray it on all of our grains, grains, pasta, flour, rice, cereals are all sprayed with this chemical called folic acid. And I say chemical because we make it in a laboratory. Most people think that folic acid occurs naturally in nature. It doesn't. You can't find folic acid anywhere on the surface of the earth. We make it in a laboratory. Folate occurs naturally in nature. But we fortify or enrich foods. So if you see a label on a food package that says fortified or enriched, that means it's been sprayed with the chemical folic acid. Well, 46% of the population can't break this compound down. And if you can't break this compound down, it rises. And if you can't convert it into the usable form, methylfolate, you have a deficiency. So what are the consequences of that deficiency? Well, the first consequence is impaired gut motility. you get gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, irritability, cramping, and you start down the road of food allergy testing, food sensitivity testing, gut microbiome testing, and nothing works because you haven't addressed the pace of the gut.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give Masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.